What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator Hound. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I am excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. You have some awesome art. I first discovered you in Project Big Hype, and then your book, Commander Rao from Scout Comics, and now you got a Kickstarter coming out, and we're gonna hop into all of this stuff. I want to dig into all these books and just talk to you about everything. But before we do, I always like to ask my guests, how did you get into comics? Has there always been a love for that, or is it something that kind of blossomed later on in life?
So as a kid, I really I loved reading Kevin and Hobbes. My dad had like a bunch of old like Chinese comics that he used to read that he like gave to us. So I loved reading those. But I never really got super into comics until I was in college. And do you know the show, the animated show Gargoyles? Disney's
Yeah.
Gargoyles?
Oh, absolutely. It's so
Yeah.
good.
So I discovered that show later in life and I fell in love with it, but it was canceled after like 2 seasons. And then I found out they actually continued like a third storyline in the comic books. So I like scoured comic book shops to find these comics. And then eventually on my journey, I just found like a bunch of other comics that I really enjoyed. I ended up picking up Batwoman Elegy by Greg
Okay.
Rucka and Jace
Oh,
Williams. And I mean, it's a phenomenal book. Like,
yes.
I think it just kind of blew me away with the layouts, the writing. Like it was so good. And I've never really seen a comic like that before that used like the panel layouts like that.
Mm.
And I think that kind of really inspired me because back then I wrote a lot. So I considered myself more of a writer. But seeing that one Elegy and seeing how cool it was in the comic book format, I'm like, I want to make comics. I want to make something as cool as this. And that's kind of how I jumped into it.
That's so awesome. I've never had someone on my show where Gargoyles was one of the starting points into comics, and I love it because I've been revisiting that series now on Disney Plus, so I'm super excited
Oh,
to
it's
just
so
be.
good.
It's
It's
so
so
good.
good.
And
Yes.
there's a Comic Con that I'm going to in a couple months where the voice of Goliath is going to be there, and I'm giddy.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So
That is so cool.
it's so cool. That was one of the first books I hunted down when I was getting back into collecting was Gargoyles #1 from Marvel because I was like, I need that. It looks so beautiful. I don't care. It was
Yeah.
water damage, so I
I
love
remember,
it.
yeah, I remember they had those old Marvel bag issues, but then
Yep.
they released like a third series through like another publisher that
Okay.
I don't think is around anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sounds about right. So
Yeah.
so how did you then make the transition to, kind of discovering comics and your love for comics to say, you know what, this is something I want to create?
Yeah, so I always loved like writing stories. I've always considered myself like a writer. So I love writing prose, I loved writing poetry.
Mm.
Um, I did draw a little back then, but I wasn't like super into it. But I don't know. I think, like I said, just seeing that one Elegy and how cool it was, I was like, I really wanted to try making something like this. I really wanted to try, drawing and making something that could really tell a story that blends both words and pictures in like a meaningful way. So that was kind of how I don't know, I just really wanted to make comic books at that point. So I started practicing how to draw and I continued my writing. And then it just kind of was like a very slow, eventually my art got good enough that I could make more and better looking comics. And here I am.
Nice. So what then was your first kind of comic that you put out there that that you first created?
So that's a good question because one of the first comics I ever made was a 4-page comic called The Girl with Technicolor Blood. And that's actually the comic that my new Kickstarter comic, And We Love You, is based on. It was based on this 4-page comic that made back in 2013. And I
Okay.
didn't show anyone back then because it looked really bad. And then 2015, I redrew that same comic. And I actually did like post it online, like it was on Tumblr, it was on Reddit. It didn't look good, so the comments weren't great. So a few years later, I ended up taking those down. And then I think in 2017, I made another comic called Captain Fix It, which was also kind of like a little crudely drawn black and white comic I did in like the back of a sketchbook.
Mm.
So I think those are probably the first few comics that I've actually like drawn and put out there. But I took most of them down because they didn't look good.
So how did you get from there to then where you were at with your book with Scout?
Yeah, so I think after I made Captain Fix It, which was like, the first comic I tried pushing to an audience or tried like, I
Okay.
guess, finding an audience in. I started getting on Twitter and social media and trying to promote this book. And then later on, I think that was when I kind of switched into digital art. So then I started practicing with digital art more. And then, I don't know, my art just like over the years kind of improved enough that I made another comic called Do You Believe in an Afterlife? And that one was like a mix of prose and comic books.
Okay.
And it was the first comic I did in full color, fully digitally, and it looked a lot better than all of my other stuff. So I think that was how I got, more of a traction online, and more people started paying attention to, me as a creator. And then after that, my next project was Commander Rao. So with Commander Rao, I really just wanted to practice fight scenes because I've never really drawn anything super action heavy before. So I decided to make like a 30-page practice fight scene comic. And then it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of blew up.
Yeah, and that was one of the first places. Commander Rao was one of the first places I discovered your work, and it was a delight to read. And I have to ask you, where did the premise of this book kind of come from? I know you said you wanted to kind of just do 30 pages of fighting, which there was a lot of fighting in this, and it was really cool. But where did that idea resonate with you? Kind of start.
Yeah, so I was drawing a lot in my sketchbook still at the time, and a couple years before that, like I was going through this phase where I really liked to draw mechs and design like really cool sci-fi armors, and like I had like the rough beginnings of like this dystopian war world I wanted to make with all these mechs and soldiers, but the grander idea was really ambitious at the time, and I felt like I didn't have enough skill, time, resources to really put out this like giant war comic. So then when I was thinking about, my need to practice fight scenes, I decided I just take elements from that bigger dystopian war story and just put them into Commander Rao. So Commander Rao really is just like I guess, the last 10 minutes of what would have been like a 2-hour long war film. And that's kind of the way I thought about it.
Yeah. That's what attracted me to this book was that you did the writing and you did the art on this, the kind of design layout, it seems. And to me, that is just captivating. And was really interesting is earlier in talking, you said your layout, you were really attracted to the layouts of, I forget which book you mentioned, but you were like,
Batwoman Elegy.
Yeah. Batman, yes, yeah, Batwoman Elegy, yeah. And so like I noticed that was one of the first things that I noticed in here. The layouts are not typical of what I look at when I read a comic. And so did that inspire you to that, or did you kind of like, I want to try and just try some different things when I was doing the layouts with this? And
both. I mean, J.H. Williams is like my biggest influence in comic books, probably. I am in love with his layouts, and I've always wanted to do something as cool as that. So that was part of the reason why Commander Rao has I guess more like experimental layouts. Another part of it is because my approach to the fight scenes in Commander Rao was that I wanted all the action to look really fluid. I didn't want there to be panel 1 someone gets punched and then it feels very static. I wanted all the movements to feel like it flowed from panel to panel, page to page. So that was how I kind of designed it. I really wanted like a very cinematic, anime-like fluidity on the page itself, which is why I guess I kind of had to figure out how to do that in comics.
Yeah. Well, it was really captivating reading it because like you said, it doesn't feel like, oh, one panel, it's a punch. There's panels, but then there's also ones where there's larger panels where you see them, protagonists, in multiple positions throughout that panel. And another, like it flowed really nicely and it felt very organic in the fighting element of that comic. And I thought that was really cool to see.
Oh, thank you. That's really good to hear because that was what I was really trying to achieve.
Yes. Perfect. And so looking at this, is this kind of a world that Commander Rao, because I know you said it was kind of the end of what could have been a 2-hour earlier war movie. Is this a world that you want to explore more, or is this kind of like, hey, I'm happy with what that was?
I mean, I would love to explore the world more. I think there's a lot to it, and I think people, I really like the character, and people seem to really like the character, and so that's kind of my impetus to like make more of this world and make more of the character.
Hmm.
Originally, when I did first make it, I wasn't really expecting it to be much or gain much of attraction because, it was like my second book that I self-published, so I wasn't really expecting much from it. But I think the reception that it's got from the audience has really kind of inspired me and motivated me to like explore more of this world, and that's something I'm really looking forward to doing.
Nice. And I know you have a Kickstarter coming up, and so I want to hop into that a little bit. Uh, it's at the time of this interview, it's not out yet. So, but tell the people what this Kickstarter that you have coming up is about.
Yeah, so my Kickstarter is called And We Love You, and it's basically a prequel story to Commander Rao. But instead of focusing on the Commander character, we kind of go back 10 years before the events of Commander Rao. We still see the commander, but she's like a younger recruit. She's not really the full-fledged vigilante yet. And instead, the story focuses on another soldier named Julie, who, if you've read Commander Rao, then you know who Julie is. If you haven't, then Julie is essentially another soldier who is really close with the commander. So the story is told from Julie's perspective, and it's pretty much about her unfortunate demise, and kind of just details her life story in a way visualized by her kind of bleeding out her memories. Mm. And it's kind of a tragic war story. It's a queer love story. It's almost like a tragic coming of age story as well. It's 64 pages, and it's got an awesome team. So I'm doing the art and the writing. We've got Lucas Catoni, aka Lettering Bear, who's doing the lettering. We have Frankie White, who's my editor, and then Winston Gambro did the logo.
Yeah, and you so graciously sent me a couple preview pages, and I was reading that earlier this week, and I think it was like 11 pages. It's like, no, this can't be it. I want more. Because what you do with the design of the memories, with the, even in those first few pages of the memories and then of what's happening, it's so well drawn that like it's captivating, that it flows. Again, it's that organic flow that brought from Commander Rao to this that I think is just so well done. And I was hooked. I was like, I want more.
Thank you so much. Yes, I very, very deliberately chopped it off at that moment because I felt like that was a very good hook to leave people on. But I'm glad you enjoyed the layouts, because they were obviously, again, very inspired by that whole J.H. Williams feel, and also kind of very difficult to draw because I don't know, it's hard to do like unconventional layouts, especially when you're still kind of, I still very much consider myself like new comic book artist, so I'm still like trying to figure out the ropes. But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. And hey, if I enjoy it, that's all that matters. Yes. So what about the Kickstarter? Like, I know a lot of people, when they do Kickstarters, they do tiers and things. Are there some aspects of the Kickstarter that you're really excited about for people to get to support or to follow along with?
Yeah, so aside from the digital and physical copies of the book and cash-up tiers, we also have two really amazing prints by my friend Kira Okamoto. They did cover art for, I think, like IDW, Image, and Skybound, and their art is amazing. They are doing a pair of tandem prints of my lead characters, Casey and Julie, except the prints aren't of them as soldiers, they're of them in like casual clothes, in kind of like an exploration of what they would have been like if they weren't soldiers, which I think is very cool. We also have a flash fiction tier by my friend Easton Taverna, a writer of Samurai Grandpa, A Guardian, and a recent Kickstarter called The Whole World Blind. He's an amazing writer, and he's pretty much offering to write flash fiction in the Raoverse for anyone who's interested. And we also have stickers by my friend Brett Schmidt. He's a really amazing sticker designer. He also did stickers for another campaign I was in called The Color of Always, which was a queer love anthology. So that is very cool. And I'm also offering commissions. So if you want commissions, they're very limited tiers, but if you want me to draw you a character of your choice, then look out for the Kickstarter.
Nice. I should have realized this and I didn't, and I'm so sad. So do you have a story that you drew or wrote in The Color of Always?
I do not. I was just the editor.
Okay, you were just editor.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, because I know I a couple months a month ago or so I had Brent on and they were talking about The Color of Always, the Kickstarter, and I was like, did I miss out that you had a story? So you edited it. So then that's in the process right now still of everything, right?
Yes, I believe we have a check-in coming up to just check in on the teams, but otherwise the teams are hard at work. They're doing their thing, and
Nice.
we're very excited.
Well, I had to ask since my viewers guarantee you watched that last, that episode a month ago and are probably excited about that as I am.
Yes.
Uh, so yeah, the sticker packs, and it's so cool to see like when the comic community, like what Kickstarter tiers that people are excited about, and the draw, the prints that you have. Like I'm super excited to see those prints and what that is. Because I think that's a cool concept. Like you said, that it's not in the commander gear and the soldier gear, it's just kind of casual.
Mhm.
And they're a great, they're a great group of people right there, those two characters that you talked about and what they bring to the story. And I'm really excited to get the kind of prequel aspect in this from what we got with Commander Rao. So I'm hooked.
Thank you, thank you. I'm very excited to tell the story. It's been 10 years in the making, probably, so it's nice to finally have it out there.
So if I mentioned it earlier in the show, but if people missed out, so you did the writing and the art for Commander Rao. You said it, you're doing it for And We Love You as well. So what is that like for you? Because usually when I have someone on the show, it's I have the writer on, or I have an artist of a book, or sometimes I have the artist and writer on. But very rarely do I get someone who did a good chunk of all the book. So what's that process like for you?
Very busy, to be honest, very chaotic. I feel like sometimes it's good to have like more than one person on a team because you have people to like bounce your ideas off of with. And if something isn't working, they can kind of tell you what's going on, which is kind of the reason I decided to hire an editor this time because I felt like with Commander Rao, I was just like talking to myself and then overthinking, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work. So I think it's nice to have like a second pair of eyes on things, but at the same time, I like to write and I like to draw. Those are two things that I love doing. So it's a lot of work, but it's things that I enjoy doing.
And I know there was in Project Big Hype, you just did the art for the story that was involved there. You're doing some editing as well. Is there I know this is going to be a loaded question because it's probably going to be hard to, is there something that though with comics that you lean towards that you are drawn to more, the writing aspect, the art aspect, the editing aspect, whatever? Is there one that you're like, I like that, I probably lean towards that a little bit more than the other? Or are they like your kid, they're all that you love them all equally?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I think, see, the reason why I write and draw is because I feel like when the writing gets too hard, I can just draw my ideas, and when the drawing gets too hard, I just write them. So like I both enjoy them, but I both like find them frustrating in depending on like what I'm doing. So I think that's why it balances out. Like I enjoy doing the writing and I enjoy doing the drawing, but it depends on what's kind of scene I'm writing or what kind of thing I'm drawing.
I believe in Commander Rao, there's another kind of issue in the back of it, another story
Yes.
that someone else did the art for, correct?
Yeah, so that was a Jeremy Simser. He is actually a storyboard artist for a bunch of like Marvel shows. He storyboarded for WandaVision. I think he's working on She-Hulk right now. He also did a bunch of other TV shows like Supergirl, Game of Thrones. Like he is an amazing, amazing artist. And he did the backup story, which is pretty much a 5-page short story called The End of the Line that bridges Commander Rao to And We Love You.
Yeah. Well, I asked that because I feel like, I was curious to see like, how was that for you letting someone else kind of play in the sandbox that you created? Like with Commander Rao, you were doing the art and the writing. And then in that backup issue, the backup story, you allowed someone else to take over the art aspect. What was that like for you, as you were writing, to see someone else's take on something that you created in the art form?
Honestly, it was really nice. It was really nice for me to be the one who like gets the art in my inbox and like be really excited and see all that progress work. Like, because usually I'm the one sending all of that. So being able to see it, it's like, oh, it's so cool. And also, Jeremy is a great guy to work with. He had a lot of input on the story as well. Like originally, it was just supposed to be 4 pages, but he was like, I think adding in a fifth page would really help the story. And then he showed me what he wanted to do, and I was like, you're right. So, it's like that back and forth. It's nice having that second pair of eyes to look over your stuff and really kind of collaborate and think of how to make improvements. So, yeah, I very much enjoyed doing that. And to be honest, I've always told myself that I really wanted to try doing more writing and not just like doing everything. So, yeah, hopefully that's like a start of it.
Good. And jumping back into the Kickstarter with "And We Love You," we're getting kind of the prequel aspect of it. How was it different for you in this process? I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, but from where Commander Rao, where it was mostly you were, like you said, talking with yourself, how was it the process a little bit differently with having an editor that you hired to say, like, okay, like to help kind of command the ship a little bit more this time?
So I think it definitely helped, just like and almost like a mental health way, because And We Love You was a rather difficult project in terms of like narrative structure and layouts. And I felt like if it was just me, not knowing if the layouts were going to read right or like if the story was going to read right, I would have probably gone insane. So, so having Frankie there, like I'd show him pages and be like, okay, can you tell me what you think the read order is? And then he'd like number the panels for me. And if it didn't read right, then I'd just go back and redo it. So that was really helpful in terms of figuring out the layouts. And then, there were times when like I was just like stuck in a place, and then Frankie would like help me figure out how to move the story forward, or like if I kept reworking a page too many times and he's like, okay, the page is fine, you don't have to rework the page 10,000 times, and that kind of helped get the ball rolling. So that was very much appreciated his commentary and feedback and just helping keep the ship going forward.
I am excited for this project. I know my viewers at home will be excited about the project. I hesitate to ask because we're in the midst of, this Kickstarter getting launched, but do you have anything else that you are kind of in the works of that you can talk about, or is it all kind of, or are you kind of, your focus right now is "And We Love You"?
So I mean, my main focus right now is "And We Love You." I do have a couple anthology projects that are, I guess I'm a part of, that are coming out like much later on in the year. Production hasn't started on those yet, so my main focus right now is "And We Love You," but eventually those anthologies will get done. And then kind of in the back of my mind, I'm figuring out, I guess, pre-production stuff for the next Traverse story. Nothing concrete yet, but
Yeah.
there are notes and there are outlines. So it's gonna happen.
Nice. Well, where can people follow along with you if they want to stay up to date with all what you're working on, what you got coming out? How can they follow you and support you?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at @fellhound_. I also have an Instagram, which you can find me on fell.hound. And I recently just made a website. So if you type in fellhoundart.com, then you can find my website. You can find out where to buy my comics. If you're looking to buy a copy of Commander Rao, then it's available on the Scout web store. So if you search up Scout Comics and click Commander Rao, then they should have all the options for you there. And yeah, I think those are most places where you can find me.
Nice. Yeah, I was looking at your website earlier this week, and some of the prints that you and art that you've done is just so cool. And I noticed that you did some cover, like you did some sketches. Were some of those posts that you had like exclusive covers that were for comics or things, or because I saw something with Tart, I think with one of yours, like, so are some of those like things that you created for exclusives, or was just kind of for fun, or what was that? What were some of those prints and arts?
Yeah, so I think I had 5 covers on my site right now. 3 of them are for my own comics. One of them was just a mock cover I did. If it's not for anything, yeah. And then the Tart cover was actually the Scout web store exclusive for their Tart Demons and Demagogues, I think. So yes, that was a very lovely official cover that the Tart team, which I love, hired me to do. And that was very fun.
Yeah, I got it. I got Tart somewhere right back there. It's another great book and another great read.
Mhm.
I gotta ask, I'm just curious, there's something I'm starting to ask before we end the show. If you as a creator, there was somebody out there that you haven't gotten to collaborate with, that would be a dream collaboration with you, like what would that person, who would that person be if you could think? I know it's a tough right off the bat. Is there a dream collaboration though for you?
That's a great question. I actually, I mean, in like an ideal scenario, I would love to write and J.H. Williams would draw it. I would like, I'm a big fan of Stephanie Hans and her covers. If I could have one of her covers on my books, I would love that. That would probably be like dream cover artist right there.
Right.
But yeah, I think I don't know. I'm a big fan of the people that I have collaborated with in the past, like Brent
Mm-hmm.
on Project Big Hype.
Yep.
We do a lot of stuff together. We're still talking about doing stuff together. So, I really love collaborating with them and a bunch of other people.
Stepping on to do a cover would be, that'd be a dream come true.
Honestly, yes.
Well, Fellhound, thank you so much for just taking some time to sit down, talk about comics with me, talk about your love for comics and what you're creating. And anything else you want to say about the Kickstarter before I let you go?
Uh, Please back it. We worked really hard on it, and it would mean a lot if you would like to back my book, art book, with Lucas and Frankie and Winston and my production manager, Vicky Lima, who helped me print the book. So thank you, everyone.
Gang, again, as always, Kickstarters they hang so much on those first couple of days. Go out and support the Kickstarter, support Fellhound and her team. And this is an awesome book that I am excited to check out. Gang, go follow Fellhound online on everywhere, Instagram and Twitter. Check out the website. Go get the book. I'm telling you, you're gonna be happy with it. So thank you so much again for just taking some time to talk comics with me.
Anytime. Thank you for having me on. This was a
Absolutely.
blast.
Yeah. So with that being said, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.